When you step into silence, you often believe you are holding all the power. You assume that by withdrawing your words, your attention, and your presence, she will be drawn back to you, restless, wondering what you are thinking, desperate to regain your focus. It feels like a strategy, doesn't it? A way of making her chase, of turning the tables, of placing yourself in the position of control. But the truth is far from that perception. The reality is that silence rarely holds the effect you imagine. What you perceive as power, she often perceives as indifference. What you see as a move to influence her emotions, she may interpret as a lack of care, a lack of maturity, or even worse, a lack of value. And this is where most men fail to understand the nature of human psychology. Silence can create distance, yes, but distance is not always desire. Distance can be dismissal. Think about the foundation of any relationship. It is built upon connection, communication, and emotional resonance. These are the invisible threads that bind two people together. When you cut those threads by choosing silence, you believe you are tightening the bond, but in fact you are loosening it. Because what you are actually showing her is not strength, but absence. Absence of leadership, absence of clarity, absence of emotional stability. And absence is not attractive. It does not draw her in. It pushes her away. Now let's look at how the mind interprets silence. The human brain craves certainty. It wants to know where it stands, what is happening, and how to prepare for what comes next. When you withdraw and stop speaking, you do not create intrigue in her mind the way you think. Instead, you create a gap, and her mind seeks to fill that gap. But here's the key. She doesn't fill that gap with thoughts of you being powerful. She fills it with assumptions that you are uninterested, immature, or incapable of handling emotions. The same silence you believe is working in your favor is painting a completely different picture in her mind. And the longer that silence stretches, the more her interpretation hardens. Silence, in many ways, reveals you more than it hides you. When you go silent, you may think you are concealing your frustration, concealing your need, concealing your insecurity. But in truth, silence exposes it. She doesn't look at your lack of words and think, he is powerful. She looks at your lack of words and thinks, he doesn't know how to handle this. He doesn't know how to communicate. He is choosing avoidance over resolution. And in that moment, your silence begins to lower your value in her eyes. Here's what many do not see: women are highly intuitive. They are trained by experience, by social interactions, by emotional awareness to read between the lines. Silence is not neutral to them. Silence communicates. But what it communicates is rarely the message you want. You may want it to say, I am strong. I do not need to speak. But what it actually says is, I am uncertain. I am insecure. I am hiding. And when she hears that unspoken message, she doesn't chase. She steps back. She protects her energy. She concludes that you are not as solid as you portray. If you pause and look deeper, you will realize that silence does not place you in control. It places her in control. Because now, she is the one deciding how to interpret your lack of response. She becomes the author of the meaning behind your action. And people rarely interpret things in the way you want them to when you leave the canvas blank. You are handing her the brush and saying, paint me as you see me. And 9 times out of 10, what she paints is not an image of strength, but an image of detachment. Silence also carries another hidden weight. It shows where your focus lies. Because when you go silent, you are often not detached as you pretend to be. You are obsessing, waiting, watching to see how she reacts. You check if she reaches out, if she notices, if she questions your absence. In other words, your silence is not true indifference. It is disguised desperation. And she senses it. She knows the difference between authentic calm and strategic avoidance. She can feel when silence is genuine peace and when it is a loud attempt at manipulation. And here is the paradox: the more you try to use silence as a tool, the louder it speaks about your insecurity. You imagine that saying nothing makes you mysterious, but saying nothing over time makes you irrelevant. You do not create longing. You create space for someone else to step in and give her the clarity and attention that you chose to withhold. And once that happens, your silence doesn't just lose its power. It destroys the very connection you hope to protect. So when you believe that silence is affecting her, understand that it is not affecting her in the way you think. It is not making her restless, not making her desperate, not making her value you more. It is making her question your maturity, your ability to communicate, your emotional presence. It is making her see your silence as absence, not strength. And in relationships, absence rarely creates attraction. It creates detachment. When you step back and look at the way people connect, you will notice that at the core of every relationship is the hunger for understanding. Every human being, no matter how strong or independent, seeks clarity in the emotional exchanges they share. Women, in particular, value clarity because it represents security, direction, and stability. What many men often confuse is the belief that leaving a woman in the dark, withholding communication, or creating uncertainty will somehow make her more attracted, more attached, or more intrigued. The truth is that while mystery can spark curiosity in the beginning, confusion is poison to attraction. Confusion does not pull her closer, it pushes her away. She does not fall for silence or vague gestures. She respects the man who can stand firmly in himself and express his thoughts with certainty. When you choose to create confusion instead of clarity, what you are really doing is testing her patience. You believe that by being vague or by pulling away, you are showing her that she has to earn your attention. But what she sees is not strength, but immaturity. She sees a man who is unsure of himself, who hides behind silence because he does not know how to face his emotions directly. And here's what you must understand: women are naturally wired to seek stability in their relationships. They don't want endless puzzles, they don't want hidden meanings, and they don't want to constantly guess what you are feeling or thinking. They want alignment. They want to know where they stand. They want to feel secure in the connection they are investing in. Consider the difference between clarity and confusion in her mind. Clarity creates peace. When you speak honestly, when you express your thoughts without playing games, when you let her know your intentions, she feels calm. That calmness translates into trust. And trust is the foundation upon which respect and attraction are built. Confusion, however, creates tension. It forces her to question, to second guess, to feel unsettled. And tension, over time, erodes trust. The moment trust begins to slip, attraction does not deepen, it dies. So when you withhold communication thinking you are raising your value, what you are really doing is creating a crack in her trust that only grows wider the longer you remain silent. Clarity does not mean over-explaining or over-sharing. It does not mean begging for understanding or flooding her with words. It means being direct and intentional. If you are interested, you say it. If you are hurt, you express it. If you want space, you communicate it clearly instead of vanishing into silence. That is what earns her respect. Because respect comes not from how well you can manipulate her emotions, but from how consistently you can stand in your truth without fear. When you show clarity, you are demonstrating that you are a man in control of himself. You know your mind, you know your feelings, and you are unafraid to reveal them. That is strength. Many men believe that by being silent, they create a challenge. They think she will sit and wonder, why isn't he speaking? Why isn't he calling? Why isn't he showing up? But here is the reality: she may wonder for a short while, but eventually she does not lean in. She leans away. Why? Because no woman wants to build her emotional life around uncertainty. Uncertainty does not inspire her. It drains her. She does not wake up excited to deal with a man who cannot provide emotional clarity. Instead, she starts to close herself off and protect her energy from being wasted. And once she decides to protect herself, your silence no longer has any effect. Clarity is also deeply tied to emotional intelligence. When you are clear, you show that you can navigate emotions with maturity. You are not afraid of discomfort, not afraid of expressing what you want, and not afraid of the possibility of rejection. Silence, on the other hand, is often rooted in fear. It is the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being vulnerable, or the fear of being rejected. But a woman can sense that fear. She can feel when silence is not strength but avoidance. And avoidance never builds respect. Respect is earned when you stand in the storm of your emotions and communicate with calmness and intention. Imagine for a moment that she is confused about your silence. She starts asking herself, why isn't he reaching out? Is he upset? Is he losing interest? Did I do something wrong? That state of mind is not attraction, it is anxiety. And anxiety is not the soil in which love grows. Anxiety makes her pull away. Anxiety makes her feel unsafe. Anxiety makes her look for clarity somewhere else, with someone who does not play games of withdrawal. The moment she finds clarity with another person, your silence loses all its imagined power. What so many fail to recognize is that women are not seeking perfection, they are seeking presence. They do not expect you to never feel emotions, never feel anger, never need space. But they do expect you to express those things with clarity instead of leaving them in the shadows. When you tell her honestly, I need some time to think, she respects that. When you disappear without explanation, she questions your character. When you tell her directly, I don't agree with this, she can handle it. When you shut down and refuse to speak, she sees you as incapable of handling conflict. Clarity shows strength. Confusion shows weakness. And when you understand this, you begin to see why silence never works the way you imagine. Silence does not inspire curiosity, it creates doubt. Silence does not raise your value, it lowers her trust. Silence does not make her respect you, it makes her step back. What moves her is clarity, because clarity is leadership. Clarity shows her that you are not afraid to face reality head on. Clarity tells her that she can trust you to handle emotions like an adult. Clarity creates peace, and peace is what makes a woman feel safe enough to love deeply. Connection is the heartbeat of every meaningful relationship, and at the core of connection lies emotional intelligence. It is not the sharpness of your looks, the size of your bank account, or the cleverness of your silence that sustains attraction and respect. It is the ability to tune into the emotions of another human being and respond with presence, with understanding, and with strength. Emotional intelligence is the skill that separates those who create shallow encounters from those who build lasting bonds. It is the difference between a man who is remembered and a man who is forgotten. When you rely on silence, you may think you are showing composure, but in reality you are avoiding the responsibility of connection. Emotional intelligence requires you to be present, to engage, to read not only your own emotions but also hers, and then to act in alignment with what the situation truly calls for. A woman is not drawn to absence, she is drawn to presence. Presence is what makes her feel seen, valued, and safe. And presence cannot exist in silence that is used as a weapon. Presence requires expression, awareness, and a willingness to meet her where she is. Think about how powerful it is when someone truly understands you. When you speak and the other person doesn't just hear your words but feels your emotions, you walk away with a sense of connection that goes beyond logic. That is what emotional intelligence provides. It is not about solving every problem or always saying the perfect thing. It is about creating a space where emotions can flow without fear of judgment or dismissal. Women are naturally inclined toward emotional depth. They do not simply want words, they want resonance. They want to feel that their emotions matter, that they are acknowledged, and that they are safe in your presence. A man who lacks emotional intelligence often believes that withholding communication will elevate his value. He thinks distance makes him seem stronger, yet strength without sensitivity is emptiness. He fails to realize that the true mark of strength is the ability to remain grounded while navigating emotional currents. A man with emotional intelligence does not hide from emotions, his own or hers. He acknowledges them, processes them, and communicates them clearly. That is the kind of strength that inspires trust and attraction. When you are emotionally intelligent, silence is no longer your strategy because you recognize that silence does not build bridges. It builds walls, and walls do not attract, they repel. What creates intimacy is the willingness to engage, to express, to understand. This does not mean that you must talk endlessly or share every detail of your inner world, but it does mean that you show her through your actions and your words that you are not afraid of emotions. You are not afraid of her intensity. You are not afraid of being vulnerable. Vulnerability is not weakness. When it is held with strength, it is power. Emotional intelligence also shows itself in the way you handle conflict. Every relationship will face disagreements, misunderstandings, and moments of tension. A man who lacks emotional intelligence either explodes in anger or retreats into silence, thinking that shutting down will make the problem go away. But a man with emotional intelligence knows that conflict is not the enemy, avoidance is. He listens, he reflects, he speaks with intention, and he seeks resolution rather than escape. That ability to handle conflict with maturity is one of the most attractive traits a man can embody, because it signals that he is dependable even when things are difficult. Another layer of emotional intelligence is empathy, the ability to step into her shoes, to imagine what she is feeling without judgment. This does not mean that you always agree with her or abandon your own perspective. It means you are able to acknowledge her experience as valid, even when it differs from yours. When a woman feels understood, her defenses lower. She does not need to fight for recognition or struggle to be heard. She can relax into the connection, knowing that she does not have to hide or censor her feelings. That relaxation deepens attraction because it allows her to feel free in your presence. Without emotional intelligence, silence becomes your only tool, and it is a blunt, ineffective one. It may delay a conversation, but it does not resolve anything. It may temporarily create distance, but it does not generate respect. It may give you the illusion of power, but it does not provide real influence. Emotional intelligence, on the other hand, equips you with the ability to respond, to lead with calmness, to hold space for emotions without being controlled by them. It allows you to show strength not through withdrawal, but through engagement. The truth is that emotional intelligence is a form of mastery. It is mastery over yourself, your impulses, your reactions, your fears. And when you master yourself, you naturally gain the ability to connect with others on a deeper level. Women are drawn to that mastery because it creates stability. Stability does not mean that you never feel emotions. It means that you are capable of feeling them without being overwhelmed. It means you can stand firm in the middle of emotional storms and provide an anchor for both yourself and her. That is what creates trust, and trust is the soil in which attraction grows. So when you look at connection, understand that silence is not a substitute for emotional intelligence. Silence may make you feel in control for a moment, but emotional intelligence gives you real control. The kind of control that does not come from avoidance, but from understanding. It is not the absence of words that moves her. It is the presence of awareness, empathy, and strength. Emotional intelligence is what allows her to feel safe, valued, and drawn to you at a level far deeper than the surface. Attention is one of the most powerful currencies in human relationships. Where you place your attention reveals what you value, and what you value is what grows. Many men misunderstand this principle and believe that by withholding attention, by pulling back, or by disappearing into silence, they increase their value. They imagine that absence makes them appear more desirable, more mysterious, more important. But what they do not see is that attention and absence are not equal forces. Absence does not raise your value. Intentional attention does. It is not the lack of presence that attracts her. It is the quality of presence you bring when you are there. When you withhold attention as a strategy, you are attempting to manipulate her emotions. You are hoping she will feel deprived, that she will miss you, that she will lean in to chase what you are denying. For a short time, she may notice the absence, but over time, deprivation does not create desire, it creates detachment. People do not bond with what is absent, they bond with what is consistent. They bond with what makes them feel seen and recognized. When you fail to provide that, you do not create attraction, you create space for disconnection. Attention is not about flooding her with constant words or gestures, nor is it about obsessing over her every move. It is about presence. It is about the moments when you are fully engaged, when you listen deeply, when you make her feel like she exists fully in your world. That kind of attention is rare in a world where most people are distracted, half present, and consumed by their own thoughts. When you give her attention with depth and intention, you separate yourself from the crowd. You become the man who actually sees her, not just the man who notices her. And that difference is enormous. Absence, on the other hand, communicates neglect. Even if you believe your absence is strategic, to her it feels like abandonment. When you retreat into silence or pull away without reason, she does not interpret it as strength. She interprets it as disinterest or immaturity. She questions your capacity to show up in a relationship, to provide consistency, to lead with stability. And once those questions take root, they slowly erode whatever attraction she felt. Because attraction is not built on uncertainty, it is built on trust. The man who understands the power of attention does not waste it on games. He does not give it recklessly, but he does not withhold it out of fear or strategy either. He knows how to balance it, when to give it fully, and when to maintain his own space without creating confusion. He realizes that attention is not about quantity but quality. 10 minutes of true, undistracted presence can have more impact than hours of half-hearted interaction. And a single moment of genuine recognition can outweigh days of shallow exchanges. When you withhold attention, you may think you are making yourself the prize. But the truth is that a real prize does not need to play games. A real prize is valuable because it offers something that cannot be easily found elsewhere. Your value comes from your ability to create experiences that resonate emotionally, to make her feel safe, understood, and valued. That requires attention, not the kind of attention that seeks validation or approval, but the kind of attention that flows naturally from a man who is grounded and confident in himself. Absence exposes insecurity. A man who feels secure in his own worth has no need to retreat into silence to prove himself. He knows that his presence is powerful because he has cultivated it. He has developed the ability to listen without judgment, to speak with clarity, to give his energy without losing himself. That is what makes his attention valuable. It is not scarce because he withholds it. It is valuable because it carries depth. It carries intention. It carries weight. Attention is also a reflection of leadership. In any dynamic, the person who pays attention holds influence. Why? Because they understand. They observe. They notice what others miss. And when you understand, you can lead. You can guide conversations, resolve conflicts, and create connection because you are attuned. A man who withdraws into absence loses that influence. He becomes reactive, waiting for her response, hoping she will notice. But a man who directs his attention with intention becomes proactive. He shapes the energy of the relationship rather than being shaped by it. In every relationship, there will be moments when space is necessary. Space is healthy, but space is not the same as absence. Space is communicated clearly. It is chosen with awareness, not as a silent punishment or a manipulative tactic. When you tell her, "I need time to think, and I'll reach out when I'm ready," that is space. It still carries attention because you are acknowledging her while taking care of yourself. But when you vanish without a word, that is absence. It carries no intention, no recognition, no respect. It leaves her feeling dismissed, not valued. So the principle is simple: absence does not build attraction. Attention does. And not just any attention. Intentional, grounded, present attention. The kind that makes her feel she is not just another person in your life, but someone whose presence you truly recognize. The kind that shows her you are not afraid of intimacy, not afraid of expression, not afraid of connection. Because it is in those moments of true attention that bonds are formed. And it is those bonds that sustain desire, respect, and loyalty over time. Silence is never just silence. It is not an empty space. It is not a neutral action. It always communicates something, and what it communicates often says more about you than about her. When you go silent, when you withhold your words and retreat into absence, you may think you are sending a message of strength or control, but the truth is that the message she receives is very different. Your silence speaks volumes about your inner world, and in most cases, it reveals insecurity, fear, or avoidance rather than the confidence you want her to see. A man who is secure in himself does not fear communication. He does not hide his emotions behind a wall of silence because he knows that emotions are not a weakness to conceal, but a reality to be managed. Silence, when used as a shield, exposes that you do not yet have mastery over yourself. It tells her that you are overwhelmed by your feelings, unsure of your next step, or afraid of how she might respond. Instead of showing power, it shows paralysis. Instead of creating respect, it creates doubt. Think of it this way: when a child refuses to speak because they are upset, everyone understands what is happening. The silence is not a mystery, it is a clear display of immaturity, a way of expressing, "I don't know how to handle this." Now imagine a grown man doing the same thing. It does not inspire admiration, it inspires disappointment. Your silence is not being interpreted as mystery or dominance. It is being seen as an emotional tantrum in disguise. And the moment she interprets your silence as immaturity, the respect she once held begins to fade. Silence also reveals how comfortable you are with vulnerability. Vulnerability requires courage. It requires you to show parts of yourself that might not be perfect, parts of yourself that could be judged. But that is where real connection is formed. When you choose silence instead of speaking, you are often choosing to protect your ego rather than open yourself up. You are telling her, without words, that your pride is more important than the relationship. And while you may think this makes you look unbothered, it makes you look unavailable. Emotional unavailability is not attractive to someone seeking real connection. It does not make her want you more. It makes her realize that she cannot reach you. Your silence, whether you intend it or not, tells her something about your level of maturity. A man who cannot articulate what he feels, who cannot explain what he needs, or who cannot address conflict directly is showing that he has not yet developed the tools for emotional leadership. Women notice this immediately. They may not always say it out loud, but they feel it. They sense when a man is shutting down rather than stepping up. And no matter how much you want to believe that being distant makes you powerful, what she sees is avoidance, not authority. Silence also reflects your relationship with responsibility. Every interaction in a relationship carries a responsibility. To listen, to understand, to clarify, to resolve. When you choose silence, you are refusing that responsibility. You are saying, "I will not participate in this process. I will not take ownership of my role. I will not show up." And absence of responsibility is never seen as strength. It is seen as weakness. Responsibility is attractive because it signals stability, reliability, and maturity. Silence communicates the opposite. It reveals that you would rather run from problems than face them. Another layer to consider is how silence reveals your intentions. If your silence is a tactic, if you are deliberately withholding words to create a reaction, then it exposes manipulation. Manipulation never inspires true respect. It only breeds resentment. A woman can sense when silence is being used as a tool to control her. She knows when you are trying to make her chase, when you are trying to make her doubt herself, when you are trying to make her bend to your will. And instead of drawing her closer, that awareness pushes her further away. Because no one values being manipulated. No one respects the person who chooses games over honesty. Your silence also exposes the way you handle pressure. Pressure reveals character. Under stress, some men rise and take action. Others shrink and disappear into silence. When you choose silence, you are showing her that when life becomes uncomfortable, you do not lead, you hide. That image stays with her. It becomes the lens through which she sees you. She begins to wonder if you will disappear when things get difficult in the future, if you will retreat into silence when challenges appear, if you will abandon her emotionally when she needs you most. These questions take root because of what your silence communicates. Even the absence of words is still a message, and often it is a louder message than the words themselves. You might be thinking, if I don't say anything, I can't say the wrong thing. But silence itself becomes the wrong thing, because it leaves her to interpret, and interpretations are rarely flattering. In that space, she decides what your silence means, and usually she concludes that it means you do not care enough, you do not respect her enough, or you are not strong enough to face reality. True strength has never been about how well you can hide your emotions or how convincingly you can withdraw into silence. Strength is not the absence of words, nor is it the refusal to express what you feel. Strength is found in self-mastery, the ability to know yourself, to regulate your emotions, and to express them with intention instead of being controlled by them. Expression is not weakness. It is power. The man who can communicate his truth with calmness, with clarity, and with authenticity stands far above the man who hides behind walls of silence and games of avoidance. Because expression reveals courage, and courage is always respected. When you look at the men who truly command influence in relationships and in life, you will notice one common trait: they are not afraid of being seen. They are not afraid of saying what they mean, of making their intentions clear, of standing in their vulnerability without shame. They do not use silence as a crutch, because they understand that silence is often a mask for fear. They do not fear expression, because they have built the inner strength to handle rejection, disagreement, or misunderstanding. They know that speaking their truth may not always get them the outcome they want, but it always preserves their integrity. And integrity is what builds trust. Expression is the foundation of leadership. A leader who cannot speak cannot inspire, cannot direct, cannot create unity. The same principle applies in relationships. A man who cannot express his emotions, his needs, his frustrations, and his desires cannot create the depth of connection that a woman longs for. She cannot bond with silence. She bonds with what you reveal. She bonds with the way you make her feel through your words and your actions. The absence of expression makes her feel alone, even when she is physically with you. Presence without expression is emptiness. It offers her no insight into your heart, no window into your mind, no invitation into your inner world. Expression also demonstrates confidence. It shows that you are not afraid of who you are. You are not hiding. You are not suppressing. You are not pretending. You are real, you are authentic, and you are grounded. A man who cannot express himself often lives in fear of judgment. He worries about saying the wrong thing, about appearing too vulnerable, about exposing his insecurities. But that very fear is what diminishes him, because in trying to avoid appearing weak, he ends up projecting uncertainty. A confident man is not one who never feels doubt or pain. He is one who can acknowledge those feelings and still communicate them with strength. Authentic expression creates intimacy. Intimacy is not built on mystery or on guessing games. It is built on openness. When you express your thoughts and emotions, you invite her into your world. You give her access to the truth of who you are. That access is what deepens connection, because it allows her to see you fully, not just the polished exterior, but the raw reality. And when she sees that reality and still chooses to be with you, the bond grows stronger. By contrast, when you refuse to express yourself, she never gets to know the real you. She only knows fragments, and fragments are not enough to sustain true attraction. Many men mistake silence for strength because they believe emotions are dangerous. They believe showing emotion makes them vulnerable to being hurt or rejected. But vulnerability is not weakness. It is a test of inner power. It is easy to close yourself off, to retreat, to remain silent. It requires no courage to hide. What requires courage is to open yourself up, to risk being misunderstood, to stand exposed in front of someone else and still remain grounded. That is strength. Because strength is not about avoidance. It is about resilience. It is about facing the discomfort and expressing anyway. The man who chooses expression over silence also sets himself apart in conflict. Silence during conflict is often interpreted as disinterest or avoidance, but expression creates resolution. When you articulate your perspective clearly, when you state your feelings without aggression, when you share your needs honestly, you create the possibility of understanding. And understanding is what resolves tension. Without expression, conflict lingers and grows. With expression, conflict transforms into an opportunity for deeper trust. Women do not expect men to be flawless, they expect them to be honest. Honesty requires expression. Expression is also tied to influence. The words you speak, when backed by authenticity, shape the way people see you. They shape the way she experiences you. A man who can express himself with clarity is seen as strong because his presence carries weight. His words have substance. His intentions are known. His energy is transparent. A man who hides behind silence forces others to guess, and guessing never builds trust. Influence belongs to those who communicate with power, not those who disappear behind a mask of withdrawal. Even in moments of difficulty, expression is what sets you apart. When you admit that you are hurt, but show that you are handling it, she respects you. When you communicate your need for space instead of vanishing, she respects you. When you acknowledge frustration without lashing out, she respects you. Every time you choose expression, you demonstrate maturity. Every time you choose silence, you risk being seen as emotionally unavailable or incapable of handling real connection. True strength lies in the ability to balance expression with control. It is not about spilling every emotion uncontrollably, nor is it about suppressing them until they explode. It is about channeling your emotions into words that are clear, intentional, and authentic. That balance makes you powerful. Because when you can master yourself, you can express yourself. And when you can express yourself, you create trust, respect, and attraction that silence will never produce.